Just because your hot rod is drivable doesn't mean it's streetable. Stay tuned. So there is a difference between being able to drive something and something being streetable. If you paid attention to Casper's last video when I drove him down the road, it was drivable, but not very streetable. The throttle was like an on-off switch, and it was running really rich. I was pretty excited, if you can't tell.
First time in 2.5 years. This is unbelievable, y'all. I can tell that carburetors need some tuning just by listening to it.
But yeah, I mean, come on. This thing is a beast. But this thing is running really rich, and I had some other issues I had to work out. One of them, like I said, the throttle linkage was very sensitive. And I initially had the control rod into this hole here. To slow the ratio down, I moved it out to here in an attempt to slow it down. I still have some adjusting to do, but yeah, I've got to dig into some carburetors before I can go into all that. So to give you a rundown of what this engine is, because there's a lot of new viewers to the channel, this is an engine I've dubbed Project Mixed Up Boss. It is a Frankenstein of engines, basically. Has Boss 429 style heads by Greg Brown of Hammerhead Performance Engines. They are just phenomenal. I have a whole playlist on this engine. I'll put it up here in the corner somewhere so you can go check it out. But this engine made 708 horsepower and right at 600 foot-pounds of torque, naturally aspirated on 93 octane pump gas. And it's topped off with 2 Dominator carburetors. So getting back to that whole streetability thing, this would be my first crack at trying to tune Dominators for the street. I think it'll work. There's a lot of similarities to the 4150, with the exception of being the intermediate circuit, which is in these carburetors. It'll be interesting to see when the intermediate circuit comes in versus the transfer slot. So I'm going to dive into this thing. The first order of business is pulling the plugs out of it and verifying that it was running rich. Doesn't really take an Einstein, because when you can come out here and crank a tunnel ram equipped vehicle in 35 to 40 degree weather and have it light off and pretty much idle right out of the gate, that lets you know it's really rich at idle. So anyways, once it's tuned up, I'll have to sit and babysit it and do all the normal stuff until everything stabilizes temperature wise. Then it'll run like it should. But my bet, these plugs are pitch black. All right, so I just pulled the plugs out of this thing. One of the most beautiful thing is being able to pull plugs out that easy, being up here. But it also presented to me another problem. Yeah, check this out. So we've had torrential downpours for like the last 2 days, I'd say, give or take. And spark plug holes filling up with water. So basically I had to take air compressor and blow out the spark plug holes before I was even able to pull the plugs out in the rear 2 cylinders on both sides. So I'm gonna have to figure something out to seal this thing up as best I can. See, this hot rodding stuff, you're always learning, and it's not always good stuff. It's not always fun. You have to figure it out, but that's where we're at. Let's take a look at these plugs here. And just as I suspected, they are all gas fouled. I mean, that one is a little bit better, has a little bit color to the porcelain, but you get here to the back, yeah, solid black. And all 8 plugs pretty much look the same. So with pretty much all 8 plugs looking exactly the same, I know that the issue is in the idle circuit, because in the last video I also mentioned that I turned in the air mixture screws to try to lean it out some, but it was for naught. I mean, basically the screws were a quarter turn out, if that, and it still did that. So that tells me that it's getting way too much fuel. So the next thing on my agenda is get these fuel bowls off, get the meter and blocks off, and then we're going to talk about idle feed restrictions and how they're different in Dominators, and how these carburetors have intermediate circuits where the traditional 4150, 4160 does not, and how that affects the tune-up. So I've got to get these things apart, and yeah, you'll see me in there on the bench whenever I get it all done. So let's see if I can do this with the camera and all of this, but now I'm making a mess. Yep. Give it a little shake to get out the rest. All right. Wipe it down. Valve covers look too good to get gas on them, but it will happen. One of the things I know that will probably be left in the comments is, before you dive into changing idle feed restrictions and all of that business inside the carburetor, it's very important to make sure that your float levels are correct and the fuel pressure is where it needs to be. Now, me on a Holley, 6 pounds or less, that is where I feel they work really good, no issues. You have to remember, when you got a tunnel rim set up, you actually have double the amount of fuel in reserve in the fuel bowls. The main thing is making sure that it doesn't run out of fuel pressure at the top end of the track. One cool thing that Jim at Allstate Carburetors did when he built these carburetors for me is, this is the business end of the main body right here. Let's see if I can get the camera right. But he went ahead and tapped these 2 passages right here, which are feeding the transfer slot, to where I can change these out and use air bleeds, which would normally go in the top of the carburetor, and use them here as a restriction and be able to tailor the fuel curve better. This hole right here is actually the intermediate circuit on a Dominator right here, and there's actually a restriction in the meter and block to control the fuel flow through that circuit. So I'll have to do some experimentation to figure out what works best for this setup. This is going to be a little bit different animal with mixed up balls in Casper with 2 Dominators, but the principles are still the same with those carburetors as a regular 4150, 4160 Holley. So let's take a look at this. All right, this is my basic little kit, and you see that I have my drill bits, bleeds that I've got for different sizes right here, so on and so forth. So this is actually the meter and block that's on the carburetors right now. This is just one of them. I normally take one of them off at a time and do it and work my way around. That way I know where I'm at. Anyways, and I know that I'm putting the right meter and block back on because these are staggered jetted, I believe. Yep. 71 and 73 jets. So make sure that I always get the right meter and block on the right main body. So this metering block here is actually an oldie but goodie. This is a metering block that's original to a 4224 Holley center squirter carburetor. You can see that it is pristine, unmolested, and so the first thing you'll notice is the passages look different on a Dominator versus a traditional Holley metering block. You see that this one doesn't have provision for a power valve. That's the way that they came from Holley. The idle feed restriction on these particular metering blocks are right here versus up here in this corner. So I've always been the type, I like to have them down low, below the fuel level, but that's a subject for another day. So based off of my experiences with the 660 center squirters and getting excellent drivability out of them, these things from Holley come with a 37 thousandths idle feed restriction. Huge, okay? Now granted, from Holley, it's a 2-corner idle mixture deal instead of 4-corner. So you got to take that into consideration as well. So when I put extra set of metering blocks on my center squirters, I actually use 600 vacuum secondary blocks to do it. I wound up trimming a ton of fuel from the idle feed restrictions in order to get it to run the way that I wanted it to. So when you buy a custom carburetor, normally they will come with a chart. Now Jim at Allstate Carburetor built these Dominators. You can see that they are 750 CFM times 2, and this is the jetting that we all started out with, okay? But you notice up in here in this corner, he has some other things. That 120 N and S, that's the needle and seat. The .065, that's the size of the power valve channel restriction. And then down here, it's got 35 thousandths idle feed restrictions. So knowing what I know, 37 was way too fat, and 35 is going to be in the same ballpark. So the first order of business is getting that trimmed down, and I'm going to just have to take a guess. I'm just going to have to take a guess at this because, like I said, I don't have my wideband hooked up yet, but I've done this enough to know which direction I need to go. I'm still probably going to leave it on the rich side until I figure out what this engine combination wants, because I've said it 1,000 times. It's not about what Andy thinks should be right. It's what the engine thinks is right. That's what matters. So what I'm going to do, go over here. Now this is actually the idle feed restriction out of this metering block right here. It's out of this side right here. The orifice inside there, I don't know if you can see it, that is 35 thousandths. I've already measured it. And how you measure these things, get you a pin vise drill set, go through, find the one that will actually go through it, make sure that it's kind of snug, not really loose, measure it with a caliper, micrometer, whatever you got, and then you'll know what your idle feed restriction actually is. So my first stab at this is probably going to be, I'm thinking I need to go from 35 in every corner, probably down to around 28. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty big jump. But like I said, I want to be kind of conservative. I don't want to go too lean because that's not good. And that will allow me to get those idle mixture screws back out about 1.5 turns, thereabouts. 1 turn, something in that ballpark, something where it can actually control the fuel. Now when you're doing this, if you're doing an older Holley, what you will have to do is take a drill and drill those out, and then tap it. Get you a 6-32 drill bit, 4-32 drill bit, whichever size is closest to the hole, based off of the year carburetor it is, and then drill the hole out, tap it, and then you can screw in a set screw and then put custom size orifices in the set screw itself. Now this is a junk Dominator metering block. What I will do is I will thread in the set screw right here, drill it, because I don't want any of the metal shavings in my good metering block. So I will use this as just like a way to hold the screw while I'm putting the hole in it. And yeah, this is a time-consuming process, but I promise you, if you are trying to run a tunnel ram on the street, this extra time right here really pays off big time as far as drivability. I've got the blank set screw in there, my little drill pin vise here. So what I'm going to do is just put a little pressure on it, start drilling until it goes through. It's almost there. You got to be careful because you're using drill bits that are 28 thousandths, so it's really easy to snap a drill bit if you're not careful. There, it went through. All right, now we can take it out. Now we have an orifice that will get us in the ballpark at least. Now I may have to do this a couple different times. Well, just finished up all of the metering block stuff that you've seen. Getting ready to take this thing down the road. I've been tweaking on the idle mixture screws, trying to get it dialed in. I think it's better, but I think this is going to be an ongoing process. This is going to be something, like I've said, I'm going to have to do multiple times until I get it dialed in. But we'll see how it drives and go from there. I'm thinking about actually driving it over to David Vizard, so come along with me. Well, we're gonna go see David, see how this goes, see if it's any better. Well, I can tell that it's better. Just don't know how much yet. Once it gets up to temperature a little bit better, so I need to idle it up. So that's a good thing. this thing is so fun to drive. I forgot just how fun it is. The converter actually doesn't act that bad with it. I figured it would be way too much, but or blow through it, which I haven't got on it wide open yet, but we'll see. This thing is just something else. I don't know what else to say. Believe it or not, this thing is pretty loud, even with full mufflers. I mean, trying to tame this much power, see it like it acted like it wanted to die right there, which is kind of weird, but do it on D-cell, which is when the air bleeds and trying to shut off the circuits, maybe plunge it out. Clean up the old plugs, put them back in there. I've got a new set, but I didn't want to waste it on doing all of this. It's fun. And that's what I built it for. And to take Tony's money. What do you think, David?
It sounded nice from a distance.
With those rear tires on it, yep, you can light them up 60 miles an hour in high gear.
Wow. Right. What a sleeper.
It's no sleeper. I mean, look at it.
Yes, but no one's they're gonna think, oh, it's an old truck in here. Right. You're gonna have to have a fast Corvette to beat that.
Come here and check it out under the hood. I've been tuning the carburetors today.
Oh, look at that. Oh, those air filters are choking it.
Well, it's not really an air filter, it's a screen. I've got to figure out something that will fit against the cowl back there.
If necessary, we'll make something.
But, yeah.
Ooh, it looks big.
It is big.
Oh, look at those exhausts. Oh, look at those carburetors. Oh. Oh. Wow.
It fills it up down there.
I like the way the headers have been done. Right, now you're going to get them messy with spray coming up.
Well, I'm going to have them coated. That's the plan whenever I get off them.
Now they are stainless, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember the whole ordeal with the headers.
Yes.
Took forever.
Well, I don't remember the whole ordeal. I remember it was an ordeal. Now, I bet you if we flow test these, they don't flow as much as you think.
Well, I just put it on there to keep large.
Where did you get them from?
Somewhere off of eBay.
Right.
That just keeps large birds from getting sucked down to Dominators.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But this thing is just, it's so much fun to be able to drive it again. Well, I just made it back from David's house. Take a look at the plugs after we've been driving around on them a little while. You can see that it's starting to get more color on the porcelain. So it tells me that we are going in the right direction. Still have a lot of work to do, but this one actually has cleaner porcelain than the rest. But you get an idea of what was accomplished with this simple modification. So that's all. I've got to get my wideband O2 sensors put in here so I can really dig deep, because I'm a firm believer in having as much data as I possibly can, and those O2 sensors tell you what's happening as you're driving. You know, the plugs still tell the total story, but it just helps me get these things dialed in even more. So I hope you liked the video, and until next time, this is Andy from Unity Motorsports Garage. I'll catch you later.